Something bad happened. You think that it shouldn't have happened. You think that the other people are responsible for it. Specifically, we're talking about vets here. And you want to seek justice of some form. So I want to go over how this process might work, what is reasonable to expect, so that you don't go down a path that really you should not. Now, I want to start this whole thing by saying, number one, I'm not a lawyer, so any information you get here is just my opinion, certainly not to be taken as being a legal opinion that means much. The second thing is that I have never sued anybody, nor has Tammy, and I've never been either a plaintiff or or a defendant in a legal case. So actually stepping into the courtroom and doing any of this stuff, never done it. But I have got involved in situations where people have wanted advice on it and seen what the outcomes are. So I have had a little experience on this. So the thing that you've got to justify in your own mind is the amount of time and effort, financial expense and emotional drain that this is going to take and what the outcome is going to be to see whether this is something that even makes sense for you. So we're going to talk about when you should sue and can you sue. Well, the first thing is you can sue anything for any time that you like. That doesn't mean that you'll be successful, and it doesn't mean that it won't just get immediately thrown out of court. So if you go to try to sue somebody on some silly case or evidence, you're likely going to cost you money and time, and you're not going to get absolutely zip out of it. So you've got to be realistic about what you expect. And one of the best ways to find out whether or not what you want to do is sensible is talk to a lawyer. You will always be able to find a lawyer in your town who will give you an initial consultation that will not cost you anything. And they'll sit down with you for half an hour to go over what's going on, to give you an idea about whether or not they think that this makes sense. And there's two different ways that a lawyer is going to approach this. They're going to do things and probably for most things that are animal related as a contingency. They want money off you. And the reason they want money off you is they suspect that it's going to be difficult to get the money out of the other party and it may not cover their expenses. So they want money out of you up front as opposed to doing something based on a contingency that they get a certain amount of the money that they win. And I don't know what the current costs are on this, but I would think that you're going to spend something between $175 and $250 an hour as kind of legal fees that you can expect to be charged. Places like San Francisco would be more expensive than in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example. And then if they're going to do this on a contingency basis, my guess is they're going to want to take somewhere between a third and a half or whatever you're going to get if they're going to do this based on no money up front. And I suspect that in most cases you won't have that option. So be prepared for the fact that you're going to have to put some money down quite likely, and you may lose that money, and that you can get countersued. You bring a suit against somebody and you don't give all the facts, this might turn around and back on you and you could get countersued and it could cost you a significant amount of money. You might be opening up Pandora's box because the things that you did that were negligence that you're not basically owning up to. So the answer is yes, you can sue, and there are times that it absolutely makes sense. So I think one of the things that you've got to think about at the very beginning are what are your damages. If you're going to bring a suit against somebody, what's the purpose of the suit? It might be because you want to teach them a lesson. You want them to admit the fault. You want them to do some training for their employees. That's one reason. That's not the normal reason. The normal reason is there's some financial damages that occurred to you and you want money back to make you whole again. So that one is a difficult wicket. So the first thing is that typically you won't get back what you think you should get. That's the first thing, is that you're not going to get everything in your favor, and you ask for $50,000 and you maybe get 10. I mean, these are just arbitrary numbers I'm throwing out here, right? But realize that you've got to decide that the goal at the end of the day, if it's dollars, makes sense for the time and effort and heartache that you're going to go through. All right. So what kind of things can you sue for? Well, basically, it depends on the situation as to what maybe you can get. I mean, to get punitive damages, to get things like loss of a vet's emotional support for you and for the vet, those are difficult things to get. Doesn't mean they can't be had, but they're difficult. Now, the replacement value of a dog might be something that's much easier to evaluate. And, if this is a Labrador that you picked up or a mutt that you picked up at the local pound, and that dog went through some process of the vet that ended up killing the dog, and you feel and it was proven to be malpractice, you may only get what the value of the dog is, and that might be $10. Obviously, it's not worth the financial effort to go through all of this to try to retrieve $10. And no lawyer in their right minds is going to have any part of this, so you're going to find that out in an early point. All right. So what are the things that we're basically talking about suing for malpractice? We are going to talk probably in another whole lecture about small claims court. There's another way to go at this, which is small claims, that you don't have to get a lawyer involved in this. But we're talking about a malpractice suit. So there are basically 4 things that you have to show happened to be able to be successful in a malpractice case. So the first one is the duty of care, that you have to prove that the person who caused the problem accepted the responsibility to treat your vet. Did you sign some paperwork? Is there a witness to the fact that you went to the vet and they said that they'd do this for you? Did the vet accept the fact that they were going to do this for you? There are some examples of things like Good Samaritan where, maybe there's a vet on the street, your dog got run over, they came to help you, and they're doing this as a Good Samaritan. They're not doing this as a contract in their office to look after the dog. They did something that was maybe not the most prudent thing to do and your dog died. You'd have a difficult case. Because a Good Samaritan law would come in. All right. So the duty of care, it's normally fairly easy to show that that this person accepted a responsibility of looking after your pet. You've got to have breach. The breach of the contract says that you have to prove that the actions or the lack of actions of your vet fell below what would be the acceptable provisional standard of care for that particular procedure. Now, this is variable. Is it the acceptable standard of care in your community? Is it an acceptable standard of care for the whole nation? And there's a difference here. So that one has to be established, and that depends on the court, and I can't give you any answers, but your lawyer would, as to what you could expect as being acceptable standards of care. And this is the hardest thing to show, is that they did something that was inappropriate, or they didn't do something that would have been appropriate. This is the hardest thing of all of these to prove. This is the one that's going to cause you the problems. So then you've got to unless it's a gross negligence case. I'll give you an example. Your dog had a tumor on its leg. They were supposed to amputate the left leg, and they amputated the right leg. Gross negligence. This is a different situation. That one is very easily provable, and you would win your case. Now, the whole question about what the damages are is a whole other thing we're going to get into. But some cases, the level of care that was provided was so awful, there was such a bad mistake that was made, to show breach of contract, not very hard to do. But most cases, much harder. And we'll talk more about that here in a moment. Next thing you've got to do is you've got to prove proximal cause. You've got to prove that the deviation from the professional standard was the cause of your pet's injury. So this, again, is a bit difficult, So they gave a particular kind of anesthesia and your dog didn't recover from anesthesia. So you've got to prove that one, that the anesthesia that they gave was the wrong kind, and that was then the cause of the demise of your dog. So it makes the thing even harder. Right. So then damages. You've got to show what the value that you have lost through this negligence, through this breach of contract. If it's your family pet, it's the replacement value of the dog. And that can be fairly easily looked up. I mean, you can look and see what similar age, similar breed, similar status of dog would be selling for and get an idea about what the dollar value figure is. And it's going to be, in most cases, pretty low. Now, if this was a stud dog with a fantastic pedigree who has a proven record of so much dollar value he's brought in over the last year, that's a completely different situation. Then you could say, look, this dog have a life expectancy of being a stud dog for another 2 years. he generated $250,000 last year, I'm suing you for $500,000. That might be something that one might be able to collect on. But if you're making the claim that you've lost your beloved friend who sleeps in your bed and there's emotional distress to you, that might be a much harder thing. And how do you put a valuation on that? If it was a gross negligence case, you probably have a better chance of getting punitive damages, where the judge says, I'm going to teach you a lesson here because you've done something that's so dishonorable that we're going to take whatever the charge is worth for the value of this dog and we're going to multiply it by 10. That could happen, but it's not likely. All right, let's have a look here. So, in all of these situations, there's going to be a statute of limitations. You've got to bring this thing before the court within 1 or 2 years, and it depends on your state and the circumstances. But you need to be aware of what the statute of limitations are. What's my advice? If something has gone badly wrong, take a deep breath. Don't immediately start going into the office and start screaming and hollering at people. Get all of your information together. But obviously you're going to do something well before the year is up. You're going to do something within a week or so. And I think the first place to start with this is to get some legal advice. Go talk to a lawyer. It's free for the initial round of this, and find out what is reasonable. The next thing is get all of your documentation in place. Any bills that you've had, any bills that might be incurred because of what the problem, get them. Any correspondence that you've had with the vet, get it. Go get a copy of the records. They've got to give you the copy of the records. You may have to have a lawyer go demand the documents, but you can get documentation as to what has been going on in for their side of the whole case. What prompted this whole thing, by the way, was a conversation I had today with somebody who had a litter of 5 puppies that died within a couple of hours of a C-section. And the puppies look completely fine, and it looks like the cause of the problem was incorrect use of anesthesia by a junior doctor who the senior doctor handed over to the junior doctor and probably should have given them information about what they should have done. So this would be, breach of contract, and in that situation, they destroyed the animals and didn't give them the animals. I would want the dead animals. I'd put them in my fridge or my freezer, and I'd have a necropsy done. If this thing was going to be a significant value and I wanted to pursue it, I would want to have whatever I could get so that I could then show a toxicology report, a necropsy report, or whatever, as to maybe what happened and what shouldn't have happened. So get your documentation, get your records, get your payments, get any correspondence. Go get, if you've got a dead puppy, get the dead puppy, get the dead dog. Don't let them destroy it. So the should I sue, let's just go to this one here for a second. We've already talked about this in some detail, but you've got to be factual about this. Just don't get emotional. You've got to be factual. You need to make sure that you're presenting the true case of what happened. You can't make stuff up. It'll trip you up. You've got to be factual, and you've got to be as unemotional as you can in terms of dealing with people about what happened. So to go in crying and yelling at people is not going to be particularly helpful. You've got to have a clear, level head. Personal injuries are rather a different thing. There are claims that you can have under personal injury that relate to gross negligence, and I'm not going to talk about that here in any great detail. All right, so you've got your documentation. You're almost certainly going to have an expert witness, and they're going to have to be present, and they're going to charge you money, and they've got to be believable. So, in the case of the anesthetic that I was talking about, you've got to have somebody who's accredited, professor of a university, who teaches the courses, who can say, oh, you used benzodiazepine when you shouldn't have done, and that was a fatal mistake that caused the death of these puppies, which is the case I was talking about. So you're going to need an expert witness, and an expert witness is going to have to be deposed, and they're probably going to have to show up. Okay, looking through my notes here. I would, in all of these cases, report this to your state licensing board. Remember, one of the things that the vet doesn't want is they don't want a lawsuit and they don't want their name damaged because of whatever happened or didn't happen. This is not the kind of press they want. Your most likely outcome that's beneficial to you is this is settled out of court through the insurance that the veterinary has. So not all vets will have malpractice insurance, but a lot of them will, especially the bigger clinics. So you've got that as a place to go. Again, you want your lawyer to handle this process for you. I would make a claim to the state licensing board in that not county, but in that state, to make it a formal complaint about what happened, so that I get that in place. Right, all right, let's have a look. Keep on going here. And I should have talked about this at the very beginning, and it probably should be in here. Should I sue? Look, you need to think about what really happened here. Things go wrong. Things go wrong. Sometimes it's a series of small events that happened, that no single event was the trigger for this thing, but 3 or 4 things happened together that got you in this situation. So, to err is human, and a certain amount of mistakes is quite viable and is basically acceptable. It's these gross things that can happen that are totally against what normal practice would be. Those are the things where suit makes sense. So, just because your dog died doesn't mean that every vet has made a mistake. I've never sued a vet. I've had some situations where I wasn't particularly happy about the outcome, but I accepted it. And I realized that I was part of that process as well, and that I was not blameless. So make sure that you're assigning the blame correctly, so that you don't get in this situation where you're completely, gobsmacked by the error that was made by the vet, not realizing that you contributed towards this. And that these things, unfortunately, going to a vet is not 100% successful. Bad things happen where dogs die, or they have treatments that don't work out the way that you want, and that unfortunately is just part of the nature of the game. So remember, get a legal advice to make sure that you're going down the right path, because I would venture to guess at least 50% of the things that we're talking about, the vet should never have been sued in the first place. So I'm not trying to get on the vet side. I'm not trying to get on your side. I'm just saying you've got to be practical about this. The next thing is that, if people call me up and they want my advice on these kind of things, and what I say almost always is try to reach a negotiation, try to get a settlement with these people. Be realistic about what you'd expect, try to get a settlement. It's much better for everybody if you don't have to go through the legal paths of, a year's worth of a court battle and the expense of doing it and all the heartache and frustration and mental anguish that it causes. You're much better to get this thing over quickly. And if somebody will say, yes, our insurance will settle this for X number of dollars, it's less than what you wanted, but it's something that makes some reasonable sense, go for it. Okay. So I think we'll do another one on small claims, because that's a whole nother thing. If you've got a situation where you want to sue somebody and there's some limits on what you can sue for on small claims. You don't need lawyers to do this. You can do this quickly. It's a fairly straightforward process. So we'll have another thing just on small claims. But there we go. There's quite a bit of information there. But remember, be sensible about this. Don't assume that every time something goes wrong, it's somebody else's fault. Accept your responsibility as it's coming in. Get all of your documentation in place. Go get some legal advice. And if you decide to go down this road, be prepared for the fact that you're probably not going to get everything that you want, and it's going to be a battle and it's going to be emotional. Good luck. Thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate people who subscribe to me. It helps me, encourage me to do more of these videos. But do remember, disclaimer here, I am not a vet. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I'm purely a person who's been breeding dogs for the last couple of decades. Any information that you got from this video, use at your own risk. There's nothing implied here, and certainly this should not be used as a substitute for advice from your veterinarian or your medical professional. I hope you enjoyed the video. Come back for more of them. Bye.